At some point in the near future, Yunseo Lee gathered the courage to ask Sihwa Kang out. Their relationship is a bit complicated, but respecting the girl's definition, let's call it unique. On the current day, as she was leaving school after the final bell, Yunseo bumped into another girl who had declared herself an enemy. However, she kept walking as if nothing had happened. Seeing that she didn't get Yunseo's attention the way she wanted, the other girl made it clear that Yunseo should stop messing with her boyfriend. At that moment, the protagonist looked directly at her nemesis and wiped her shoulder in a movement that caused discord. On the other side of the ring, the adversary was held back by her friends, or things would have gotten crazy and heads would have rolled. This type of situation is nothing new for Yunseo. Ignoring that girl who was clearly off her rocker, she was called a crook, homewrecker, vile, and a misogynist. If you don't know what those words mean, please don't Google them unless you want to cry immediately. In the comings and goings of high school life, Yunseo's reality was quite sad, especially because of her relationship with a boy named Sihwa. Since they were close, the girl was the target of envy and bullying by other girls in the school who also wanted to be close to the handsome guy or simply wanted to push him away from her. "My boyfriend, give me a break and stop embarrassing yourself. You two already broke up," thought Yunseo after the last provocation she faced. The worst part is, although she was used to it and knew how to deal with these threats better, the truth was that the girl still felt bad about these things. Like in this case, for example, that girl shouldn't be mad at her. She should be mad at the guy who caused all this confusion. Speaking of which, there he was, before our eyes, the root of this controversy, the curse in Yunseo's life, the most beautiful and sensual man in the world, a true magnet for girls, himself. Sihwa Kang. According to him, the handsome boy had been waiting a long time for his friend to arrive, as they were supposed to go home together with the ghost driver. Inside the vehicle, according to the girl, the big culprit behind this irritating noise pollution was this lunatic, tapping away on his mobile phone like a gorilla and playing Candy Crush music at maximum volume. Sihwa was an insufferable pest. And in case you don't know who this young man is, which is probably the case, at least I hope so, for your mental health, here's a brief introduction. This lucky bastard inherited the most refined genes from his parents, who are famous actors, and that's why he has this polished, good-looking face. Accustomed to being the center of attention since birth, Sihwa learned to speak at 2 days old. At 2 weeks, he was solving math problems. At 3 months, he founded a political party called PU just to troll a political opponent. And at 5 years old, he was responsible for the theoretical formulation of North Korea's nuclear program, his great comrades. In a few words, hey, Sihwa Kang is our king. People often say that Kang is like the sun, like the sea, like the stars, like the moon, and he'll devour you too if you're not careful. In fact, it was precisely because Yunseo was so close to this sun that she got burned. Although she didn't understand why this guy was nicknamed the Sun, the raw and simple truth is that the boy lit up the path wherever he went, and if you looked directly at him for too long, you could end up with a black spot in your eye. In Yunseo's case, it was more the second option that happened to her, because to her, this jerk was a real pain in the ass. For Yunseo, Sihwa was just a what? Sihwa asks. Well, to Yunseo, Sihwa was the sun that set her peaceful life on fire, the root of all evil. But it's not just that, of course. I thought you were staring at me because you had something to say, the annoying boy added. Put your phone on vibrate, it's loud as hell, the girl finally spat out. It's not just that because, on top of everything already mentioned, young Kang is also the protagonist's childhood friend. To be precise, they've known each other for 16 years, 2 months, for weeks, 27 days, and 7 hours. To be even more precise, they've known each other for as long as they can remember, maybe even before that. They've always gone to and from school together, studied together, gathered together, everything you could imagine. They're practically inseparable, so close that they get sick of each other. The only thing they don't have in common is that Yunseo has 3 nipples and is an athlete. Sihwa, on the other hand, prefers to play the piano. Their mothers have always been BFFs, but Yunseo thinks it's a bit too much for her taste. For example, where will this all end? Will she and this human turd go to college together, then work together, live together, have kids together, die together? Jesus Christ, how horrible. Someone, please separate Yunseo from Sihwa immediately. Anyway, looking at that angelic yet devilish face, Yunseo asks if he received a bill or something because the guy's expression soured instantly. He replies that today's tutoring session was canceled, so Yunseo starts thinking about what she'll do with her free time. But the boy reminds her that it's because of her birthday. By the way, he's already excited about his best friend's party because his mom has been preparing the cake and the Winx Club theme since early in the morning. And the cake is strawberry, the birthday girl's favorite. Listening carefully to those words while her mind wandered slightly, Yunseo pondered that this was Sihwa Kang. As his nickname suggests, he shines and shines like the sun. Everyone Yunseo knows likes him, and among those people, we can include herself. A few hours later, the strawberry-laden cake was already on the table. Both of the guests were singing the Korean "Happy Birthday" to the birthday girl, who was enthusiastically thanking everyone for the love she was receiving. Sihwa's mom handed the lucky girl her present, and Yunseo wasted no time opening the box to find a beautiful, shiny necklace that must have cost the price of a kidney on the black market. But it wasn't just any necklace. It was the one Yunseo had wanted for a while, which was surprising because she'd only recently started eyeing that piece of jewelry. The woman explained that Sihwa had told her about it, but their conversation was interrupted when a house staff member called for her. Yunseo looked at the necklace with deep admiration and then smiled genuinely in joy. Beside her was Sihwa with his usual annoying posture, tapping his finger on the table like an insufferable brat. However, instead of yelling at the boy like she usually did, Yunseo did the exact opposite. She reached out her hand toward him, confusing the boy. Then she asked for his present too. After all, it was her birthday. Also, if he didn't want a slice of cake, she was more than happy to take it. Sihwa replied that he had already given her a present on her 2006 birthday, those weightlifting dumbbells, and reminded her that she already had a piece of cake on her plate. In response to this insult, Yunseo didn't hold back and called him a shameless jerk, so he came up with an argument to clear his name. What else do you want besides this necklace? A ticket to Disney? A fighting rooster? A shirt autographed by Ciro Gomez? You need to tell me so I can get it. This boy trying to be nice is very strange. There's definitely a catch, no doubt about it. Yunseo knew this very well, but she was left speechless by the boy's unexpected behavior. And since the girl was a bit stunned, Sihwa demanded that she tell him what she wanted by the end of the day, or else there'd be no gift at all. Hearing that, Yunseo thought that her relationship with Sihwa was special. She believed that, just as Sihwa was special to her, she was special to him too. With that in mind, and knowing that nothing ventured, nothing gained, Yunseo gathered all her energy to ask a question that could change the course of her story with this boy forever. The question she asked, we already know, as it was the scene that opened this story. Awkwardly, Yunseo asked her friend to go out with her, but it wasn't just the usual hangout. It was something more like really going out, you know? Anyway, Yunseo thought she could be special to Sihwa, but when she saw that shocked look on his face for the first time in her life, the worst crossed her mind. At that moment, Sihwa spat out his drink and coughed incessantly, leaving the girl extremely embarrassed. Not believing what he'd just heard, he asked Yunseo to repeat what she'd said so he could process her words more smoothly this time, without being caught off guard. Hearing this, Yunseo, who wasn't dumb, quickly pretended it was all a joke, just kidding, a prank. And then, to avoid the awkward tension in the air, the smart girl got up to grab some napkins to clean her face since the rude boy had spat on her. Okay, the excuse was decent. But the real reason the girl wanted to leave the table was so Sihwa wouldn't see the pulsating redness on her face, her heart pounding so hard that it bent her ears, and her head spinning out of control. And mainly, the consequences of the words that had escaped her mouth faster than her brain could anticipate, leading to this desperate attempt to simply run away. Heading straight for the bathroom, Yunseo looked at herself in the mirror to see the result of the disaster on her face, while being invaded by the sad certainty that this birthday would forever be remembered as a terrible memory. On the other hand, Sihwa would pretend this event never happened, which ended up being better for Yunseo, but the decision she made within herself was that she would never again confess her feelings to anyone, and that she would never allow herself to feel this way for someone else again. By completely shutting herself off emotionally, Yunseo hoped to erase this episode and keep Sihwa close, but she couldn't even do that. Years later, when Yunseo Lee was 22 years old and already studying physical education, it had been quite some time since her friendship with her best childhood friend had ended. In the middle of a university orientation, while the advisor was emphasizing that if a student missed for classes, they would fail the entire course, all Yunseo could think about was that Sihwa had left the country, and now she had no idea how his life was going. In the never-ending flow of days, these years seemed to have had no meaning. The woman had held a secret crush on that boy for so long that she couldn't even remember when it started, and now that time had passed, she couldn't say how long it took her to get rid of that feeling. In that room, the advisor was calling out the names of students for attendance. Amid these thoughts, Yunseo received messages from Herring Cho, asking if she had made it home safely last night because she had stopped responding at some point. While replying that everything had gone fine, the advisor called the name of Sihwa Kang from the business administration course. However, the most surprising thing was that when called, Sihwa responded, "Present." In fact, his voice was much closer than Yunseo could have expected, so close that the boy himself asked if she was deliberately ignoring him, her longtime friend. Hearing that, Yunseo snapped back to reality and slowly began to process the situation. "Long time no see," said the boy who had now become a man. Yunseo was sure she no longer had feelings for that boy. Until that moment. "Sihwa Kang?" she asked. "Yup, it's me," he replied. Yunseo went into a panic and asked what this hellspawn was doing in this dump. But then the advisor gave her a scolding for disrupting his work. Embarrassed, Yunseo apologized and retreated into insignificance, while the most handsome and beautiful among the beautiful sat next to his old friend. While the advisor explained that the students would have to watch a movie and write a review about it, the girl couldn't help but look at Sihwa as if she were seeing a ghost, especially because of the boy's pale skin, which indicated that he hadn't seen the sun since leaving the country. Trying not to disturb the advisor's lecture, she wrote in her notebook, asking if he had returned to Korea for good, to which Sihwa turned his eyes to his friend, who was trying to avoid any eye contact. Then, with his usual charm, he answered her question with another question. Probably, Yunseo was annoyed by the guy's insane word games because a simple yes or no would have put her mind more at ease. In a way, it seemed like Sihwa was seeing the situation as a joke, even though it was far from Yunseo's perception of this unexpected event. Keeping the same vibe, Sihwa commented that he was surprised by his friend's long hair, then asked if she had missed him. Despite everything, going against herself, or maybe not, the troubled girl replied coldly that she hadn't. This answer wiped a bit of the smug expression off her friend's face, who was used to feeling like the center of attention. So he observed the vague and hesitant look of his old friend, unable to understand why she responded the way she did. Meanwhile, as the orientation continued full steam ahead, Yunseo was so caught up in her thoughts that she didn't realize the lecture had already ended. With that, Sihwa asked if she had any plans for the rest of the day, and, since she didn't, he invited her for a walk. Always wearing a face like she'd lost a $100 bill on the subway, Yunseo hesitantly followed the handsome boy. Outside the university, Sihwa tried to calculate how long it had been since they last saw each other and concluded it had been 4 or 5 years. Yunseo, on the other hand, replied that it was around that time, even though she knew full well it had been 6. At the same time, she was puzzled that the idiot didn't even know how long he'd been gone, until a very direct question grabbed the girl's attention. "Yunseo, why are you being so cold to me?" The boy wanted to know, "Did you really not miss me at all?" Saying that, the bastard took on a passive-aggressive stance, pressuring the poor girl for an answer as he slowly approached her. In her mind, Yunseo recalled the last time they had spoken. At the time, she had texted Sihwa on KakaoTalk, saying that at the very least he could have let her know that he was leaving. But not only that, she also asked him to reply in a sad, needy gesture. With a cold reply, Sihwa simply texted back Sunday, July 31st, as if it were some kind of automatic response. Of course, Yunseo missed him. That was obvious. After all, she had liked the boy a lot, and they had always been inseparable. But that was years ago, and now everything had changed. With that in mind, Yunseo shooed the guy away, hoping he'd stop pestering her. As she turned her back and walked away, Yunseo commented, "As self-centered as always, I see." This strange conversation was very frustrating for the girl, but she saw no way to fix it. As if that wasn't enough, Sihwa replied that she was being quite cruel with her attitude, as she wasn't showing the slightest bit of joy at his return or listening to what he had to say. Finally, he confessed that he was a bit hurt. Yunseo pointed out that she had answered every question the wannabe vampire asked, but he thought her mind was wandering with each response she gave. Refusing to let it go, Sihwa insisted on the same question, still looking for a seemingly honest answer. "Seriously, you didn't miss me at all?" the bastard asked again. Yunseo lost her patience and asked if the guy had anything else in his vocabulary besides that line. Just like on that fateful birthday, Yunseo feared she might slip up again and expose herself like before, so she remained on the defensive, insisting that she had nothing to say to her old friend. However, Sihwa made it very clear that he still had something to say to her. Hearing those words, Yunseo froze on the spot and heard Sihwa's slow footsteps approaching. After a brief pause, she turned back to him and asked what he wanted. That's when he replied, "I missed you all this time." At that moment, even though it was late afternoon, the last rays of the sun in the atmosphere shone brighter between the two of them, and the glow that highlighted Sihwa's face directly reminded her of the strange nickname he was called by. Sihwa, the sun. In that instant, it felt as though everything had changed at once, as if the years had rolled back and the two friends were still in their teens, when everything was simpler. However, tearing through the veil of nostalgia with her sudden presence, another girl appeared, hugging the man from behind. Visibly surprised, Sihwa tried to make sense of what was happening by asking how Yuno had found him. But Yuno didn't have time for silly questions. She wanted to make out in the middle of the courtyard, so she grabbed the handsome boy and planted a big kiss on him. Meanwhile, Yunseo remained petrified at the sight of that grotesque scene, because there was no doubt about what was happening here. Sihwa is dating this woman. And on top of that, it wasn't just a normal kiss. It was a public display of frantic affection that would make anyone uncomfortable, especially poor Yunseo, who not only used to have feelings for the guy, but was also standing just a meter away from the lovebirds. Realizing this, she asked to leave because things were getting awkward. However, both of them stared directly at her in silence, causing her to completely lose her cool and have no idea what to say. Thus, the couple ignored Yunseo and continued their verbal smooching, expressing how much they missed each other. Finally, Yuno wanted to know who this random girl was that her boyfriend had been talking to. "Just a friend," replied Sihwa. "Promise she's just a friend?" the girl insisted. "Yep," the boy confirmed, nailing the final nail in the coffin. Yuno confessed that she had been worried this girl might be some old flame that neither of them could handle properly, considering they'd been best friends since childhood. But of course, that wasn't the case. After all, as Yuno quietly whispered to her boy, this girl looked pretty different from the others Sihwa had dated. This one seemed to have the wrong genitalia. Setting that aside, Yuno completely ignored Yunseo's existence and invited her boyfriend for dinner with her and Yun. So Yunseo frowned and left, but Sihwa grabbed her hand and asked her to wait a second because he still had things to say, as he had made clear before. So he told his girlfriend that he already had plans for tonight and said, "See you later. Hasta la vista, baby." After saying those exact words, Sihwa pulled Yunseo away, leaving his clingy girlfriend behind. A little further ahead, Yunseo wanted to know what this guy was doing. Thinking to herself, she reflected that Sihwa had probably said that to get out of something he didn't want to do because he had always done that since they were kids. One day, at school, while the girls were swooning over the stud, he only cared about where Yunseo was going, offering to carry the box she was holding just to escape the others. Knowing this, Yunseo was never too keen on the way he started conversations in those moments, as it felt like she was just an excuse for him to avoid dealing with what he didn't want to face. Unable to shake that perception, the girl bluntly stated that Sihwa was using her as an excuse again and that he hadn't changed one bit. "Oh, is that what this is about?" Sihwa didn't care at all about what the girl had said. Then he pulled her along again, saying he was hungry and not even bothering to ask her to buy him food. He simply said, "Buy me food," without even a polite "please." Yunseo was confused by the guy's fraudulent behavior, so she made sure to ask what on earth was going on, to which he explained that she was the senior and he was the cute freshman, so she should buy him food. Understanding even less where this jerk was going with this, Yunseo wanted to know how she could possibly be considered a senior, but at the same time, she didn't want to deal with any more nonsense, so she told the guy to buy his own dinner. In response, Sihwa couldn't understand why she was so against the idea because it had been several years since they last saw each other, and now Yunseo was so reluctant to spend a few bucks to feed an old friend. Besides, he came back to Korea all alone. His dog died from overbreeding with the neighbor's dog. All his friends died from urinary incontinence. And now his parents hate him because he spent the family's savings buying cattle heads, but forgot he didn't own a farm. So they all ran away. With his poor Korean skills, he couldn't make any new friends, so he was just a lonely boy in this cruel world. Yunseo hadn't seen that coming, so she started thinking she'd been too harsh on the poor guy, but then she quickly remembered that she was dealing with Sihwa Kang, the sun, and that memory alone was enough to remind her that she couldn't possibly be too mean to a jerk like him. Finally, Sihwa took the girl's hand and declared that she was all he had, so he didn't understand why she was treating him like this. Hearing those carefully chosen and delivered words, Yunseo staggered backward and nearly fell, as the glow emanating from that man was blinding. Gripping her hand even tighter, Sihwa gently called her name, making her close her eyes and brace herself for anything possible in this world, as Sihwa and predictable were not two words that could exist in the same sentence. With some difficulty, Yunseo asked what the man wanted, and he asked, "What do you want to eat?" "I want a nice homemade meal to fill my belly." Years ago, back in their teenage years, Yunseo was engrossed in reading a romantic manhwa, which piqued Sihwa's curiosity about whether that junk was as good as the girl made it seem. In the midst of that, he touched the girl's wrist, causing her to become so embarrassed that she reacted with hostility to his approach, slapping his hand away. Sihwa began to cry like a lost puppy, even though Yunseo was sure she hadn't done anything to make the faker so upset. So, she accused him of acting, but he insisted that he was gravely wounded by her bloodthirsty attack, showing her a small cut on the tip of his index finger. Realizing that the situation was more serious than she'd thought, Yunseo apologized, while the suffering boy asked how he would be able to carry his backpack without one of his fingers. Feeling awkward, Yunseo downplayed the situation, saying it was no big deal and that the boy was being overly dramatic, but Sihwa directly appealed to her, asking her to carry his bag because the pain was so intense that it would probably be the last act of kindness she could do for him, as Sihwa likely only had a few hours left to live. Then, with his pleading eyes, the boy asked if Yunseo could do him this little favor. Faced with the circumstances, the poor girl didn't know where to look, trying to figure out when she had killed her own friend. Back in the present day, Yunseo had the exact same dumbfounded look as she carried the devil in her own home after being charmed by that pleading act once again. Still, she insisted that they shouldn't eat dinner at her place because her mom was a terrible cook and that she could pay for a meal outside, even if it cost a fortune. Regarding that, Sihwa understood what his friend was saying, but to be honest, he'd been eating at those fancy, boring restaurants ever since he returned to Korea, and everything he ate tasted the same. In other words, he would love to eat a homemade meal to feel alive again, something he hadn't experienced since his skin had turned so pale that he looked like a ghost. Either way, with his hand on his face in a sad, dramatic expression, the man left the decision in her hands, saying that eating out one more time wouldn't make him any more miserable. With that, Yunseo freaked out briefly and unlocked her door, letting the demon feel at home. In the end, that's how Sihwa ended up inside Miss Yunseo Lee's house after so long. The boy asked where his friend's mom was, so Yunseo explained that she was in the hospital at the moment, as busy as she always was. Reflecting on what she could feed this pest, Yunseo didn't know exactly what she could cook, not even whether that tomato-flavored instant ramen in the pantry had expired. On second thought, the girl didn't think she should worry too much about this freeloader's meal, so she relaxed a bit and went in search of something for dinner. When she opened the fridge, there was sliced bread, eggs, some vegetables, and nothing else. That's right, the lady of the house was on a strict diet and didn't have a frozen pizza to pop in the oven, so this was all there was for the night. Searching around, the girl noticed there was still some instant rice left, and that was it. Rice, rice, and more rice. In her words, a total disaster. Sihwa wanted to know if there was a problem, and Yunseo pretended everything was fine, but she wondered if she should order food or something because the situation was tense. At that moment, Sihwa got much closer than Yunseo was used to, almost sniffing the back of her neck. Then he asked, "Can I change my mind?" "Well, here we go again." "Galvio bueno. What do you want, man?" Yunseo asked. "I only have rice, salad, and kimchi in this house. It's tough." Hearing that, the boy got closer and closer, making Yunseo wonder if, in the end, the meal would be her. Trying to maintain emotional control in this delicate moment, Yunseo heard her name escape Sihwa Kang's lips once again. Then, as the panels of the manhwa moved forward with little variation, we saw that the boy was getting closer and closer. That's when Yunseo screamed, "What?" Back on the day she had hurt the boy's finger, Yunseo remembered how clingy he had always been. Sometimes he followed her around like a baby duckling. In the end, he always got what he wanted with his beggar-like ways, not to mention the usual charm he threw at his friend. On that particular day, he had made her carry his backpack all the way to class,